Podcast with me, Carly. Hope you are all well, witches. So starting off with our book review today, and our book review is The Women's Circle, How to Gather with Meaning, Intention and Purpose by Anoushka Florence. Here is the book's blurb. The Women's Circle is your practical guide to hosting women's circles with intention, purpose and meaning, making them a healing and empowering experience of gathering community. Seeking to remember the tradition of the Women's Circle, this book will help you revive and reclaim this ancient feminine practice, illustrating the benefits, healing and magic that occurs when women gather. Sacred space holder Anoushka Florence guides you through the process of holding your own circle, including 33 different rituals you can host with the women in your life. This is an opportunity for you to call upon your community, gather and connect. Never has there been a more important time to rediscover the power of women's circles. So community has been a huge theme in my life in recent months, and I'm sure that you will have noticed that from conversations on the podcast. I took my cacao facilitator training. I've also been training in the area of holding circle through a course with an amazing teacher called Becca Piastrelli. She is the author of the book Root and Ritual, also host of the podcast Belonging, which is well worth a listen. I've linked a podcast episode that Becca did with Anoushka, who wrote this book, that's well worth a listen in regards to this book, but more so community overall. I already hold space for witches in the Witches Institute, my Patreon. Over there, I host monthly meetings, but in a different type of gathering. So I felt the call to host a circle. So this is something that I'm going to be opening up from the solstice onwards to all witches. It's not going to be on Patreon. So if this sounds like something that you are interested in, I will be publishing some details of this from around April onwards. It will likely be a circle for each of the Sabbaths, and it will be online. So back to this book, and I thought I would read you a small section in regards to the origins of the circle. A circle with a sacred centre is the oldest known form of social interaction. This is how communities would have gathered to interact, eat, commune and pass down wisdom and stories. A place where all generations could come together to share in life. As such, the remnants of the circle can be found in every single ancient culture. The shape that has always created space for the whole to belong. The women's circle can be seen to have emerged from this, a realization of the need to separate the energy of the feminine and masculine in order for them to come into balance. With each energy holding its own unique power, it was important for the village as a whole to create the spaces in which they could retreat. The first circles that were documented span back to 800 CE and stem from African roots. Typically, these were spaces created to support women during the time of menstruation. Living in close proximity to one another, it wouldn't have been unusual for a whole village to be menstruating at the same time. For as some of you may have experienced in your own lives, our cycles tend to sync with women we live closely with. Women's circles, moon lodges, menstrual huts, red tents are some of the names used to describe these sacred spaces created for women. Living in alignment with both nature and the nature within them, their bleed was a marker to retreat. Women would leave their villages to commune in a hut all together, leaving their day-to-day lives, their families, and their usual responsibilities behind. These spaces were created in order for women to rest, to support one another, and to be given the space to go inwards, for it was believed that women were at their most powerful during this time. Communities would ask bleeding women to use this time to ask the spirits for guidance and messages for the wider village. Women would receive and channel prophetic visions that they could relate to their communities once their cycles came to an end. There was a deep understanding of the connection women had to nature and the power they held, especially at this time. As such, the red tent was a reverent space, a space of healing, of letting go, of dreaming up a new future. Absolutely love this book. This book is stunning visually. It's a hardback book with beautiful imagery throughout. It will make you want to don your floaty dresses and go barefoot and gather with other witches in the woods, in a field. It will also give you a ton of ideas and meditations and rituals and so on you might wish to try if you do have your own circle, coven, or just friends that you can share your craft with. They don't even have to be witches, just others that you can share this with. This book has pages of what you could do for different circles, such as a full moon circle, new moon circle, dark moon circle. There is a circle for each month based on the star signs, which is wonderful because you can work with the energy of each of those. There's a spring equinox circle, summer solstice circle, autumn equinox circle, winter solstice circle. Then it gets into other areas such as new love, grief, breakups, baby loss, a prayer circle, rites of passage, so circles for girls when they are small, when they start their moon cycle, when they reach the ages of 16, 18 or 21. There is a bridal blessing, mother's circle, which is like the alternative to a baby shower, a baby blessing, a menopause circle, a grandma blessing. It's all in there. Even if you just wanted to host your own circle to mark a rite of passage with some friends or family, it's just a wonderful book for ideas. So each circle outlined has a little guided script for a meditation, how you might wish to decorate a central altar for the circle, how to open the circle, some sharing prompts, some rituals you might wish to try, some prompts for pulling oracle cards, and an energy talk. This book literally holds your hand from the concept of your circle through to the actual day, even how to look after yourself through the whole process and post-circle. I genuinely believe now more than ever, we need more and more of us to hold space together, be that online or in person. I'm not saying this as a result of me holding my own space or trying to sell to you. I just feel after working on today's episode, it is more important than ever for groups of us to gather. I feel the need in my own soul now to be amongst other witches in a different way to how I do already. But outside of holding space for other witches, I've started attending gatherings hosted by other witches and spiritual types, both in person and online, so that I can feel the benefits of community, not just hosting it. It's important for me to feel the benefit of joining others so that I can do the same for the witches that I'm holding space for, if that makes sense, not just preaching about it. The circles I'm going to be hosting are going to be a little different from the types in this book. They'll be more witchy themed, but it definitely gave me a ton of practical advice and ideas and so on. I'll be hosting these online rather than in person. I live in the middle of nowhere, but secondly, so many of you have reached out to say there's nothing where you live, or you live in an area where it's just not safe for groups like this to run, or just nobody is hosting it. And if that is the case, maybe this book might encourage you to host something in your local area. In regards to this book, amongst other content, it influenced me to delve into the witch wound. I think many of us witches would love to join or host a circle, but sometimes without us realizing it, the witch wound can really impact us deeply and affect this. I've always naively believed the witch wound didn't affect me at all. But the more and more I've tried to show up for things in the last couple of years, particularly, I've realised how much this really has held me back. And actually, so many things throughout my life. You might be surprised to discover how much the witch wound might have held you back. You might even feel some anger or rage around this. I must, of course, warn you that I get really deep into this topic. I really exhausted a lot of the sources that I could find. Not all of this information is easy to listen to when it comes to the section on the burning times, but it is really important for us to understand what happened. I will, however, finish up this episode with some real ways you can attempt to work on the witch wound, which I hope will bring you some huge results in your life. If you wish to find your own witch community now, you may feel the call to sign up to the Witches Institute, my Patreon, and join the conversations and gatherings we already have there. But you can also sign up there for free, as every now and again I do post free content. And of course, if you do sign up, it really helps me out and it supports the work that I do. So yes, I'd be very grateful if you would take a look at my Patreon. I'll put a link in the show notes. But for now, join me to discuss the witch wound. The Witch Wound by Owl Moon Wisdom. She dances in the woods for her spirits and the old gods. But could she do the same for an audience of her peers? The answer is no, not yet. But that is where they urge her to go. For in this life she is meant to be seen, to wield power inherited a millennia ago, and be revered exactly as she is. She knows this wound well, as it's been with her nearly as long as her gifts. Only this time she has found the medicine to quell the ache and the strength to transmute the pain. The damage has been done, but with her, the era of healing has begun. If you have ever felt you are afraid to fully step into your power or are holding yourself back, this could be the witch wound at play. The witch wound lingers in the collective consciousness, often whether we consider ourselves a witch or not. There are many ways the witch wound might affect us. We may find ourselves at the mercy of societal expectations, perhaps the fear of judgment. We feel safer to stay small or quiet and not show up in life how we really wish we could. We might doubt our intuition and ourselves overall, hold ourselves back or self-sacrifice for the good of others, even if it deeply harms us. Perhaps we feel we are too loud or bold, or alternatively are fearful of being seen or rejected if we show up authentically as who we truly are. Perhaps we reject opportunities of leadership for fear of the persecution that we believe may come with it. We dim our light and reject our personal power. Perhaps we are worried of not fitting in, so hold ourselves back from participating in communities. We may find it difficult to open up and discuss our spiritual beliefs and knowledge. We may find that until we can accept the witch wound is present and fully work through its healing, we continue to hit the same obstacles that prevent us from growing or fully immersing ourselves into this life and its abundant opportunities. Other symptoms of the witch wound can be disconnecting from or hiding any innate gifts we possess. We may act as the good girl out of fear of being in trouble, self-sacrificing as a result. We may find we are unable to express anger and keep it repressed. We might struggle to speak our truth and experience issues around our throat. Perhaps we feel different and as though we do not belong in this world, or others may consider us as different and we struggle to accept that and try to tone it down or appear the opposite, diminishing who we truly are. Fear that if we step into the light of who we are, we will be cast out. Or perhaps you have past life memories of persecution and a deep emotional connection to the witchcraft trials. Again, one doesn't have to be a witch to experience this. It affects anyone who might feel small or silenced. The witch wound legacy exists on a soul, societal, cultural, and DNA level. This is a deep-rooted fear that has been passed down through the generations. In addition to this, today we have the toxic binds of the patriarchy, capitalism, imperialism, and religious tyranny that can restrain many of us from being who we truly are. This is a quote by Celeste Larson. The witch wound is a collective, intergenerational, spiritual wound that keeps people afraid of their own magic and power. The witch wound harks back to the burning times, also known as the witch craze. This began in Europe and influenced the Salem witch trials and many others in North America. Witch hunts also took place in countries influenced by colonialism such as India, Nepal, Tanzania, Kenya, and Ghana. Prosecutions for witchcraft reached a peak. Accounts vary in numbers, but they range from 50,000 through to over 100,000 deaths of those executed for witchcraft. The majority were during the mid-1500s through to the mid-1600s, And in addition to this, twice as many people were imprisoned, tortured, and exiled. Around 80% of these victims were women. And of course, mainly women, not even witches. Most of these women were over the age of 40. Those persecuted generally fit into categories of being unmarried or those who had sexual relationships unwed, women who owned land or who were financially independent, if they held too much power or influence within the community, women who spoke against the injustices occurring at the time relating to the privatisation of land and wealth inequality, or women who performed or received abortions. Also midwives, wise women, diviners, healers, and even those considered too beautiful or too ugly. Many of our ancestors survived this dark period of history. They would have carried the memories of this period not only in their minds but also the body. A combination of grief, fear, survival instincts and distrust would have passed down through the ages, lingering in our own blood and bones. This is an inherited collective trauma. Men and women would have been subjected to being imprisoned, tortured, and executed in barbaric, inhumane ways, often in front of the communities they belonged to. People were beheaded, burnt, drowned, hung, and if they managed to escape death, were generally cast out of the community, stripped of their status, and pushed out of their vocation. The intensity of the witch hunts meant many who served their community as a midwife, herbalist, or healer couldn't even practice and were forced to lie low and not be seen. If you were accused of being a witch, it was rare to even have a proper trial as a result of the mob frenzy that was playing out. Hanging was a favoured form of execution. Often the bodies were burnt as it was believed that this prevented the accused of coming back from the afterlife and causing trouble. This is from Wikipedia. A witch's mark, devil's mark, or stigma diabolicum was a bodily mark that witch hunters believed indicated that an individual was a witch during the height of the witch trials. The beliefs about the mark differed depending on the trial location and the accusation made against the witch. Use of the term is found earliest in the 16th century and reaching its peak in 1645, but then essentially disappearing by 1700. The witch or devil's mark was believed to be the permanent marking of the devil on his initiates to seal their obedience and service to him. He is said to create the mark by raking his claw across their flesh, licking the skin to produce a death skull pattern, or using a hot iron to produce a blue or red brand. The devil was thought to mark the individual at the end of nocturnal initiation rites. The witch's teat was a raised bump somewhere on a witch's body. It is often depicted as having a wart-like appearance. The witch's teat is associated with the feeding of witches' imps or familiars. The witch's familiar supposedly aided the witch in her magic in exchange for nourishment, blood, from sacrificial animals or from the witch's teat. It is also where the devil supposedly suckles when he comes at night to bed his faithful servants, sometimes impregnating them with his seed. Once the devilish half-breed has been conceived, The Cambion may only feed upon this teat and no other. Folklore suggests that on the 7th day of the 7th week of consecutive feeding upon the teat, the Cambion would grow to adulthood immediately and begin wreaking havoc with a range of demonic powers inherited from its supernatural father. However, should the ritual be disrupted during the 49-day period, the process has to restart all over again. All witches and sorcerers were believed to have a witch's mark waiting to be found. A person accused of witchcraft was brought to trial, if they were lucky, and carefully scrutinised. The entire body was suspect as a canvas for a mark, an indicator of a pact with Satan. Witches' marks were commonly believed to include moles, skin tags, supernumerary nipples, and insensitive patches of skin. Experts, or inquisitors, firmly believed that a witch's mark could be easily identified from a natural mark. In light of this belief, protests from the victims that the marks were natural were often ignored. So witch hunting was a lucrative business. Some witch hunters used retractable prickers to falsely accuse their victims. Another witch test involved binding a witch by ropes and submerging them in water to see if they would drown or float. To float meant they were a witch. To drown meant they were in the all clear and, of course, dead. This is from Wikipedia. In medieval times until the early 18th century, ducking was a way used to establish whether a suspect was a witch. The ducking stools, I'm like hesitating because it's just crazy that this went up to the early 18th century. It's just, blows my mind. The ducking stools were first used for this purpose, but ducking was later inflicted without the chair. In this instance, the subject's right thumb was bound to her left big toe. Oh, it's hard reading. A rope was tied around the waist of the accused and she was thrown into a river or deep pond. If she floated, it was deemed that she was in league with the devil, rejecting the baptismal water. If she sank, she was cleared and dead. Alongside these methods, producing a confession would be central to the process of trying a suspected witch. Torture was used extensively during interrogations. The epicenter of the European witch trials was Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, the Holy Roman Empire. The German trials of Trier, Würzburg, and Bamberg were some of the largest in history, each resulting in the execution of around 1,000 individuals. Following the Holy Roman Empire, France, Scotland, Denmark, Hungary, and Poland initiated some of the most savage witch hunts in Europe. Witch trials also took place in England, Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, Belgium, Ireland, Russia, Finland, Estonia, and other pockets of Europe. Thousands of witchcraft trials took place in Spain and Italy, however, very few were executed. During their imprisonment, people would be subjected to torture through instruments such as the rack, the thumbscrew, the strappado, and the scold's bridle. I'm definitely not going to get into details of those. In addition to this, sleep deprivation and assault would be used. After days of different methods to inflict pain and suffering, it would make sense that many would confess to witchcraft charges made against them. But often, once they had done this, they would be pushed further to name accomplices, which meant other innocents would be accused of the same as a result of the torture they had undergone. Around 20% of those executed for witchcraft were male. Certain regions such as Finland, Russia, Iceland, Estonia, Burgundy and Normandy were said to have prosecuted men for witchcraft at higher rates than women. There were a few factors that led to the witch craze. Essentially, people were being scapegoated for the troubles the collective were experiencing. So witches, in inverted commas, became an easy target. Amidst the burning times and the centuries leading up to it, Europe experienced many crises that changed the way magic was viewed. Between the 1300s and up to 1850, a regional cooling called the Little Ice Age occurred. This meant winters were longer and colder. Severe storms were common, which resulted in crop failures and caused a downturn in the economy. Another trigger were disputes around the privatisation of land. During the Middle Ages, the open field agricultural system was common, which involved wealthy landowners renting land to the working class for cattle grazing, collecting resources and farming. As the Little Ice Age diminished harvests across Europe, this widened the wealth gap. Landowners began fencing off this communal lands, which resulted in its value increasing, and it forced off those who had relied on renting it for income for generations. Mainly affected were widows and elderly women, and many of these women began participating in rebellions against nobility. These angry, outspoken women were considered by those in power as a threat and a nuisance. Women over the age of 40 made up the largest demographic in the witch trials. Many women in the Middle Ages earned income as brewers, midwives, seamstresses, healers, innkeepers, launderers, and domestic servants. In the 1500s, socio-economical positions for women began to decline. They began to be excluded from these vocations and subjected to stricter expectations of subservience. This was a means of controlling women and their bodies. Women who earned their own income refused to marry or bear children. They were seen as not supplying the future labour pool and were a huge threat to the growing systems of capitalism and the patriarchy. A huge trigger for the witch craze was the book Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of the Witches, written by German Inquisitor Heinrich Kramer in 1486. The text was formed of 3 sections. Section 1 discussed how witchcraft was real, inherently connected to the devil, and that women are more inclined towards witchcraft than men. Section 2 focused on the evils of witchcraft, with gruesome details of how witches fornicate with the devil and eat children and babies to gain their magical powers. Section 3 outlined how to identify, interrogate, and prosecute a suspected witch. Across 200 years, the Malleus Maleficarum sold more copies than any book in Europe, even the Bible. This is by Vicar Bradford Astrology. The witch wound carries the signature of persecution for daring to be different, daring to see beyond the veil, daring to dive into the underworld and retrieve and heal the darkness that lives within. In this life, the witch wound reveals herself through our fear of being powerful. The energy and blood that soaked the land while witches burned, hanged and died, generation after generation, now pumps in our veins, asking for a reclamation of our sacred magics. Healing the witch wound. This wound doesn't just affect the feminine, nor just those who consider themselves as spiritual. Again, it might affect anyone who isn't fully showing up in their energy of life or power. The burning times had the power to ripple out across centuries, and to this day keep many of us psychologically suppressed. It's time to reclaim our power, our voice, and step out of the shadows into who we truly are. This is an act of rising from the ashes of those who were burnt, a reclamation of what was stolen from us and our ancestors, our power, our connection to earth, and ancient wisdom. This is by @love_Melinda. Most were healers, midwives, landowners, wise women, destroyed by a system that feared their power. The witch hunts were not about magic, they were about control. It's about nurturing and strengthening that ancient wisdom that lies within you, the part of you that is an alchemizer of energy. The part of you that can connect to the elements' whispers. The part of you that can see beyond the veil. The part of you that can manifest your heart's desires. There is no more hiding her. This is by @VicarBradford Astrology. The witch wound shows up as a call to magical themes, an understanding of the world beyond the physical, an oracle, seer, intuitive knowing, and a feeling of inner power radiating from within. But with all this inner power, there is a layer of fear. Fear of being seen, fear of your own sacred magic, and fear of being the black sheep. You were born to turn your wounding, your fears, your pain into magic by healing through its guidance and transmuting its darkness into light. But transforming your own darkness, you in turn raise the vibration of the earth. It's a deeply personal journey, but here are some ways you may wish to work on your witch wound. Knowledge can help dismantle fear. The understanding that this fear is a collective imprint has its elements of being liberating. You may wish to further research the witch trials, oppression, and the ways society has suppressed feminine power and spiritual wisdom. Working on taking your power back or stepping into your personal power. Where might you need to take up more space or be unapologetic? Where might you need to set and enforce boundaries in your life? How can you detach from other people's opinions of you? How can you live on your own terms? Make a plan and gradually work through it. Accepting and working on any healing abilities you may possess, and taking steps to begin to share them with the world, even if it's just one person that you trust, or using them in a way that works for you. Reconnecting with your spiritual power, which might be through engaging in activities that empower you, such as meditation, energy healing, connecting with your higher self and spirit guides. Self-reflection. Explore your past experiences and beliefs surrounding witchcraft identity and any negative narratives or fears that may be holding you back. Can you pinpoint how you think the witch wound affects you and your life and the work you may wish to do? Journal on this as much as you can until you reach some clarity of mind and connection with your soul. Once identified, working through limiting beliefs you hold can help you shed in order to make way for new, more beneficial, positive beliefs in both yourself and what you are working towards. Create affirmations that you use regularly to help you create new neural pathways. Statements such as, I am safe to be seen, my gifts are valuable, I honour my ancestors through embracing my power fully. This, I think, is one of the most important things I've ever worked on. I think it affects every single thing in my life and I'm forever working on it. And that is working on your nervous system. This can create huge benefits in all areas of your life and well-being, but also allows you to show up in your power and open your capacity to receive. Identify areas where you are unconfident in relation to yourself and gifts and abilities. Break down how you believe you can improve your confidence and work gradually on this so you can feel more emboldened to show up in the world and share your gifts without freezing in fear. You might wish to work on rituals and spells that are for self-empowerment, healing, and releasing past wounds. Shadow work. Embrace parts of you that have been repressed or ignored. This is a journey of unbecoming and shedding old patterns and beliefs that no longer serve us. Dive deeply into limiting beliefs and fears holding you back, where they originated from, and release through ritual, writing, or energy work. Prioritize self-care, nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Engage in activities that bring you joy, relaxation, and a sense of well-being. And again, this really contributes to your nervous system. Ask the universe to connect you back to a time in your past where the witch wound may have arisen. You might want to explore past life healing to release energetic imprints of persecution. Ancestral healing, this could be a great one to work on. This can be really important. If the witch wound runs deep in your lineage, consider honouring your ancestors through rituals, offerings, and meditation. Practicing forgiveness towards yourself, but also those in the past who contributed to the oppression of witches and healers. We've talked about this on podcast episodes before. We can't always assume that our ancestors were the ones that were being persecuted. It may be that our ancestors were the ones that had to throw some names in the hat as to who was a, in inverted commas, witch. Call upon your ancestors for guidance and support in reclaiming your power. Take little steps towards sharing your gifts, if safe to do so, and where you can. You may have a trusted friend you can read tarot for or speak about your beliefs with. Maybe you begin a blog, social media page, or podcast. We need more witchy podcasts all the time about your journey. Perhaps you express yourself through art, writing, music, or dance. Practice courage and take steps to overcome fear. This could mean stepping into leadership roles within your community. So we were talking about setting up your own circle. Trust me, I have all my own fears around this with lots of things that I'm trying to do. It is one of the ways the witch wound really hits me, by being really scared to put myself out there and do this. But the fear of remaining as I am overpowers that fear, if that makes sense. Embrace visibility. Wear symbols of your spirituality with pride. Share your journey openly and trust that the world needs your magic. And it doesn't have to be extreme like that to wear symbols of your spirituality. For me, my fear has kind of been around being seen. So this sounds like a bit trite, but for me, it's dressing how I want to, because I tend to be a little bit extroverted in some ways in how I dress. And now I'm just doing that a little bit more confidently, aware of where I shrink myself. Again, I mean, I'm 5'11" as well, so I stick out like a sore thumb for my height as a woman, but I'm just being far more brave with things that I wear, so I'm not shrinking myself. You know, I'm taking up some more space, basically. Create a sigil that represents your personal power and protection and carry it with you. You might want to hold a moon ritual for empowerment. So write down limiting beliefs on a piece of paper and burn it, symbolizing their release. Or a candle ritual for releasing fear. So light a black candle and meditate on the fears holding you back. This can be really powerful. It sounds really simple, but it can be really powerful. And as the candle burns, visualize the fear dissolving and transforming into empowerment. So you might want to do some visualization on this. This is something I've been doing a hell of a lot of. It is one of the best ways that I manifest. So I have been seeing future me doing the things that I want to do, showing up how I want to, dressing how I want to, doing the work that I've been the most fearful of doing because I've been playing it small. Every morning when I wake up, the first thing I do is I'll spend about 10 minutes envisaging me, future me, and it just gives me such a thrill. And the emotion, the excitement, the feeling that I get from it, it just powers me on to do it. A great time to do this is when you wake up. So for me, I do it as I wake up, and also when I'm trying to get to sleep. It is a great way to send you off to sleep, is to go to sleep with that vision in your mind. It's really empowering, and it just keeps the dream alive that you are going to be entering into. So this is another thing you might want to try, and that is having a human design chart done, which can reveal where you are susceptible to the patterns of people pleasing, emotional overwhelm, and even the deep-rooted witch wound. The very places we feel pain or struggle are where our true power can shine once we begin healing and, deconditioning. Once we become aware of how the witch wound affects us, we can see how our healing creates a ripple effect, giving courage to those around us and passing healing to future generations, which creates a strength of legacy and magic for generations to come. She doesn't know that I'm going to say this on this episode, but the wonderful Rebecca Lover, who came onto the astrocartography episode, she does actually do some wonderful human design charts on her website. You can get one done immediately, or you can get a more in-depth one, and it's very reasonably priced as well. I'll link her details in the show notes, but yeah, she doesn't know that I'm putting this out on this episode, but she is somebody that I trust and I've trained with, and she's just a wonderful soul. Allow yourself to feel every emotion that arrives, to cry, to scream when you need to, perhaps open up to friends, family, or if you have a community to support you with this healing practice. You may also wish to explore further on from this, so to take this further, the sister and mother wound, to see if this is also something you need to work on in order to heal. Again, I'll link some bits in the show notes that have been really important in regards to this episode. The most important website, the one I need to give the most credit to, is Celeste Larson. I will put that in the show notes. She has a book on the witch wound that I haven't read, but I really want to read. So yes, I definitely recommend her work. So again, this is from @LoveMelinda. There will always be a person judging you for your gifts and work. It's taken lifetimes and lifetimes of conditioning to disconnect us from our bodies, our power, and our innate gifts. So when others stop believing in experiencing magic and beauty in their own lives, they will always judge another that is actually experiencing it. You have to keep doing your work to embody your power so you become the living example for others that reconnection to self, body, innate gifts and power is also possible for them. Absolutely. Some affirmations you may wish to use whilst working through this process. I call back all my power I gave up to keep me safe. It is safe to be powerful. I am a magical witch and I don't need to convince anyone. I love all of who I am. I am enough. I have the power to alchemize what does not serve me. I acknowledge my psychic gifts and energetic sensitivities. So this is a tarot spread called Healing Through Tarot. I'll try and find it and link it in the show notes, but I've kind of like lost it in the process of researching this. But yes, I'll try and find it. But you could also use these as journal prompts. You know, they could be for a tarot spread. You might want to journal on them. And the questions are, what story do I need to share to heal this wound? The root cause of my witch wound. What injustice needs to be righted to move on? Where have I been holding my tongue? What unspoken truth needs to be voiced? What gift needs reclaiming to heal this wound? So I'm going to wrap this episode up with a couple of quotes. This is one I love. It always reminds me to be my authentic weird self. And this comes from Practical Magic. This is one of the aunts. I think it's Frances Owens. My darling girl, when are you going to realise that being normal is not necessarily a virtue? It rather denotes a lack of courage. And this last one, I'm unsure of who the author is. It wasn't listed. Celebrate the witches, medicine women, root workers, and divine mothers who came before you in your lineage, the ones known and the ones forgotten, who were hung, hurt, stolen, and lost at sea. You are blessed with magic and the gift of visions because of these women. Show love. I'm going to light a candle and have a moment for those affected by the burning time, so ancestors of mine, and just a moment to just honor and remember those who went through this. May it never be forgotten. Thank you so much for joining me today, witches. I know it's been a little bit of a heavy episode, but it was a long time coming for me to talk about this on the podcast. Sending you lots and lots of witchy love.